Howdy everybody, and welcome back to the Mega Man tutorial. So last episode we set up the ability to pick up pickups and the ability to restore our energy using those pickups. However, in general, I should say, I was starting to feel a little ill at that time. Starting to feel the onsets of a cold, so I might have been a bit more vague on some of the descriptions than I would have liked to have been. So remember, if you have questions, please leave a comment. If something seemed unclear to you, let me know, and I'll try to flesh it out for you. And actually, if we come back to our sprites, Mega Man and Mega Man Run, some people point out to me the Mega Man Run doesn't have a final follow-through frame. Go there. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So that should help Mega Man appear to run back and forth more easily. So this was the bug with the running sprite that somebody mentioned, that I mentioned in an earlier episode. So now that's taken care of, let's get cracking. Today we are going to be working on improving our stat object, and we are going to add the ability to pop open a pause menu so we can start working on multiple swappable weapons, right? Sound like fun? Great. So let's go to our stats object. Currently have our HP set to 4. I put that way so that we would be able to restore some energy since we don't take damage yet. We have a max HP of 28. Our lives is set to 2. Our E-Tanks is set to 2. Normally this of course would be set to 0, but we will have it set to 2. That way we have some E-Tanks to test with. And of course our current weapon is weapon.buster. And this is an enum that we set back over here in the player create. And this, all these weapon and ammo information is going to get really confusing here in the future, unfortunately. I wish I'd come up with a better system for doing it, but this was the system that I came up with that worked at the time. So, unfortunately, it's because the reason why it's so messed up is because I wanted to try to unify the pictures of the bosses on the main screen with the order that your weapons are listed on the pause menu, but they did not unify any of that stuff. They just had them all having separate systems, so you end up with separate systems for everything, and it gets kind of annoying instead of having one unified system for all of the numbering. So anyways, our weapon is Buster. Max ammo is 28. That's the maximum amount of ammo you can hold. And the point of the max ammo and max HP is that you could put in, if you wanted to in your own games in the future, you could put in things that would give you more max HP or more max ammo, like in Mega Man X. And so here we have the ammo, and these are all, that's just a one-dimensional array that coincides with all these values in weapons. So this would be Buster, and 1 would be this, 2 would be that, 3 would be that, 4 would be that, and so on and so forth. Atomic Fire is actually kind of a special case because you can charge it up, so you have stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, and each one of those you need to have separate because you have a separate color palette for each one of those, and so on. Don't mind me if I cough a little during this episode. I'm still not 100% well, but at least I can talk for the most part. Alright, so let's upgrade this a little bit. We have here, just real quick, a user event 0. Restore ammo / HP before a new level. This is just a real quick and easy sort of script. for making sure that the player object has the maximum HP and ammo before each level. So just do it like that. But if you're doing the boss course, you wouldn't trigger this script between each level of the final boss, because the HP and ammo carry over between each level. Well, at least the ammo does. I don't know if HP does. No, it doesn't. Just the ammo. Anyways, so we'll have that in there. That we'll use that later on. Actually, if I go and look for it. Event underscore user 0. We put it in the object room restart. Have we made room restart object yet? No, we haven't. So we'll save that until we make the room restart object. Alright, so next up we need to add in a draw GUI. Alright, draw GUI. So what we're going to do here is we are going to draw the player's HP. And I'm just going to copy all this code out, because this code, I want to get through this as fast as possible, because we have a lot of code to cover to be able to put in the pause menu. So, plus I want to save myself as much talking as possible. So if the player exists, or the player's transition object, so it keeps drawing the health bar when you're transitioning between rooms, because we disable the player when we're transitioning between rooms. Or if object pause menu exists, which we will add in a second. And if this is this object restore energy, so remember we made the restore energy object last episode. There it is. Then keep drawing our health bar. Actually, let's set this back to 4 again. And if the room does not equal Patreon sponsors, well, we can ignore that for the most part, because we're not drawing the Patreon sponsors. Here we go. So we want to draw the health bar. We set our draw color to black and draw a rectangle at this position on the GUI. And draw our health pips. For var I, while I is less than or equal to our amount of HP, I++. And we draw our pips down through the black bar using this little formula here. So that should be fairly simple and easy to understand. And same thing with the ammo bar, except we only draw the ammo bar if our current weapon is not the Buster. So again, set a draw color to black and draw a rectangle. 17. This will be right next to the health bar, and we draw the ammo pips. Except instead of using our HP, we use ammo and whatever our current weapon is to find out what our current amount of ammo is for that weapon. And we draw the health pips. 1 1 rotation 0. I gave it the color blue. Okay, I drew it with the color blue because if I remember correctly in the game, each one of the different ammos has its own color, so you would actually use a different color pip for each one of them, but I didn't feel like adding in every single different color, so I just, well, actually I didn't have, I could have easily recolored them to make them the right color and whatnot, but I did not do that, so I just set it to C_blue to say blue is the ammo and our regular health pip color is the health. Oh well, anyways, so now that we have that there, we should be able to see our health pips. Let's go and check it out. So forgot we need to make the pause menu object. So just over in, let's see, player objects, obj pause underscore menu, and that should be good for the moment. And there's our health bar. And there's our health restored. Unfortunately, we don't take damage yet, but that's easy enough, really. So, all right, so let's close all these. We don't need them open anymore, and let's open up that pause menu object that we just created. And the pause menu object is going to be a big deal. It has a lot of code that goes into it. So let's start with a create event. Just like with our transition objects and whatnot, we deactivate all of the external objects that we don't want moving around, such as our enemies, our projectiles, enemy projectiles, the player, any spawners. We don't want the spawners to keep trying to spawn anything, especially if we disabled all the enemies. Then the spawners will think their spawned guy is gone, and then they'll try to spawn another enemy. And parent underscore pickups, because pickups are supposed to be invisible during this effect as well. Our positioning 96, our width and our height is 96 and 160. This is how big our pause menu should be. The top and the left are where it should be positioned, top left in the room when we draw the menu. When you kill a boss, you unlock new options, and so on and so forth. So available options is a DS list that I created that has the we have this is all coordinated again with our the information from the pause menu. So 1 or 0 here is next page. 1 is Buster. You always have the Buster, so these are both true because we want to be able to show them. Then 2 is Heat Man, 3 Airman, and so on and so forth. We're referencing the Masters defeated list here to find out whether or not we've actually defeated these Masters. If we defeated them, then we are able to draw their weapon into the pause menu. Otherwise, we don't. So on and so forth. Then we have the final 3 ones, which are the special 1, special 2, special 3. And so we also have E-Tanks. So that's this one right now. No, that's that one right there. Next page is that one right there. See, Flashman, Middleman, Crashman, special 1, 2, 3. And what was this last one supposed to be? Oh, that's extra lives. So you put that in there. And here's the text that each one of these are supposed to have associated with them, because they all have a single text abbreviation to indicate what weapon they are. The next page gets just a dash icon. In each one of these, and last but not least, the extra lives gets this because you have the amount of you have the little life icon that goes right here. Then you have a space, colon, space, and then the number of lives. And of course, we're going to draw some information from our page selection stuff here. So we have page 0, selection 0. This will be familiar from the Chip and Dale tutorial when we were setting up the cutscenes there. Draw caret, timer interval, and interval speed, and sound is equal to no one. Again, this is all from our starting menus. And we need a step event and a draw GUI event as well. Coming over to our step event, we just start off with this: if instance exists object, restore energy, then exit. This is so that when we use that a E-tank, we can't fiddle with the menu while we are using an E-tank. Then we have a bunch of stuff in here. It's just a big long case for what happens whenever you choose any different option. So we'll jump through this one real fast. So if draw caret, so if we are interacting with the menu, then if up is pressed or down is pressed, then var underscore limit is equal to page. If we are on page 0, then we have a limit of 7, otherwise our limit is 6. And this is just the limit of what the wraparound number would be at. So because page 0 has a 7 limit and page 6 has only 6 different selectable options. And again, this is from our stuff at the beginning, our difficulty selection title menu object. Again, play sounds, play the caret sound if we can. And again, same thing, make sure you remember plus plus instead of minus minus when we're going down. And interval timer plus plus during this time period so that our caret flashes. Alright, so that's basically just from our title object, like we said. And again, like our title object, we have a little switch case that is determined by if start is pressed, then our selection is used to choose what we're going to do here. We have several different weapons, so if it's 0, then we change our page number, because 0 is page changing. And we actually have to remember to take in our page number into account when we are swapping our weapons. So if we swap our to our buster weapon, so what we do is activate the player object, because the player has to be activated to affect the code in the player object. Then if page is equal to 0, that's where the buster weapon is on the pause menu. Then set the player's weapon variable to buster, his state to teleporting out, because you do that teleporting out state, you do that teleporting out thing when you change your weapon around. Set the image speed to 0.5 and image index equal to 0, that way we animate properly. And instance destroy, so destroy the pause menu, so close the menu basically. And if we were on page 2 here, then we would have some more options over here, but we are not going to be including the weapon that would be on page 2, which would be the Flashman weapon. We're not including Flashman's weapon, so we're not doing that there. Same thing with 2, we're not including that weapon, so I didn't bother putting any code in there. 3, we're including that. That'll be our air shooter. Again, activate the player, send him to the air shooter, teleport out, and all the same code. 4, not included. 5, instance activate object, player. That would be our bubble lead, or bubble lead. I don't know which one it is. It's probably impossible to tell. Then teleport out and animate and destroy the menu. If value is 6, no thanks. If value is 7, if we're on page 0, then use an E-tank. If our E-tanks are greater than 0 and and they didn't include a check to make sure your HP was actually below the maximum HP before you could use a E-Tank in the original game, but you could include that yourself if you feel like it. Object stats.etank minus minus, and create a restore energy object, and tell the restore energy object that you've just picked up a E-Tank. So that way the restore energy object knows to give you maximum HP. Alright, so this big thing code wasn't that scary after all. It was mostly just copy and paste, really easy. Alright. So last but not least, the draw GUI event. Well, actually, before we go over to the draw GUI event, let's come back to the player object here. And we need to put in that teleporting state. So that'd be state 7 here. So other user event 7 teleporting out. And this is really simple. Just once we hit frame 3 or use a animation in script if you prefer, activate all the objects and make sure our current weapon is set to update our stats object so that the current weapon is our weapon. The reason why you do it here instead of when you actually click the option over here in the pause menu is so that if you already have the ammo bar showing for a different weapon, it doesn't change green before the player actually does his little teleporting back in with the new weapon animation. Alright, so audio play sound teleporting in, and put us back to the move state. We're going to need to put in the palette swapping for that, and we'll probably get into that in the next episode as well. So let's come over to the draw GUI. And oops, I seem to have lost it over here on this side. Give me a minute. There it is. I had too many menus open on the other side here, so to start us off, we just draw our menu. You remember the 9-slice script. Give it the sprite for the menu, this guy. And kill you. The coordinates that we previously set up, left, top, width, and height. And it will spit out a nice menu for us. Actually, you know what? We need the player object still because we have to set up the player object so that we can actually open up the pause menu. So we'll come back to you in a minute. And we're going to have another big switch case here, but once again it's going to be, well, never mind, it's not going to be mostly copy and paste. The kind of it is, it's all the same concept, but it is a lot of annoying code here. So make sure we set up our text to draw at the center and middle, and that it's white. And if page is equal to 0, otherwise if page is equal to 1. So draw page 2, draw page 0, or draw page 1, depends on how you want to look at it. So when we are so let's focus on page 1 here for the moment. When we draw our page, we need to use for loops to create the list of all the different options that are available. So we have options 0 through 7 available. And if available options at position I is equal to true, then we draw that option. So you remember we set it up so that true or false will determine whether or not they actually can draw. So if at our available options, if that bit position is true, then we are able to draw it. So if our selection is, so we're going to start off by drawing the cursor here. So if our selection is equal to I, so if 0 is equal to, so if our cursor is currently at the same position as a option that we are looking at, and the interval has been reached, then draw the text. Otherwise, you don't draw the text. That way the text blinks in and out as you go. You're going to have to note we have a lot of positions. We're using the left top. We're using the left and top to position everything. Then we have offsets of 16 and 26 plus I times 16. And we draw option text at I in that position. Option text. And say we're doing the next page, then you would draw this. If selection does not equal I, just draw the text always. So if I is equal to 0, so if we're at the next page option, then we tell it to specifically draw the words next to the dash that we previously created. Oh yeah, I forgot. The dash in our sprite font that we have set up is an arrow. So those dashes will draw as arrows. So if we were at 0, then draw the words next to the arrow that shows up. Else if our I is less than 7, then draw a rectangle, a black rectangle specifically. And why am I drawing this rectangle here? I can't remember exactly why I wanted that in there. Let me pop it open and make sure I can see. Oh wait, I'm not telling Mega Man to draw the pause menu when I press start yet. So we'll ignore that for the moment and we'll come back to it when I remember. If I is equal to 0, else if I is less than 7, else for var j equals 0 while j is less than object stats.etanks j++. So this is so if we are at object number 7, we want to draw the etanks because the etanks draw as a bunch of dots in a row rather than as text. Oh, yeah, that's why. It's because we draw a bar and then we fill in that bar with the pips to show how much ammo we have for that option. Ugh. Yeah, that's right here, actually, where we do that. So you got to draw a black bar to fill in. And then E-tanks, they draw as just a bunch of pips in a row, depending on how many of those E-tanks you have. So then we have to draw the health/ammo pips for each one of our different options. And that was the point where I realized that I had completely made a mess of the ammos and all that stuff. So instead of trying to figure out where in the world all the ammo information was, I just created a new temporary array where I pull in the ammo information rather than trying to remember that, you have to do 1 here, then 5 there, then 6 there, 7, and then 8, and so on. So for var L equals 0, so you'll note I'm using a bunch of different letters, and that's because I don't want... So I have I being used here, J being used here, L and K, and so on. It doesn't really matter, but it's more for my clairvoyance at that point. So while we're less than our amount of HP, then draw health pips. And importantly, you need to note right here, we rotate the health pip sprite by 90 degrees because the health bar in the menu is rotated rather than being top to bottom like it is normally. And then for k equals 0, while k is less than 5, k plus plus, we're using this to loop through this here. If available options at k plus 2 is equal to true, then for that position, draw the health pips. And this is where it just got stupid confusing because available options at K, so our K is here. K is referencing this, but we have to add the +2 because the first 2 options are for the next page in the Buster, which are not being considered. So therefore, you have to add 2 before you do anything. Otherwise, you end up being in the wrong location. So for var L equals 0, while L is less than the amount of ammo in K, then L plus plus. So this will be for drawing the actual pips. So yeah, as you can see, I got really confused with all my own coding at this point. And I would certainly try to set up a different system if I were to do this all again. If I were to do it with more of my own options, I would make sure everything lined up more easily. Anyways, draw page 2. It's exactly the same as page 1, except now we're on page 2. And our options are from 8 to 15. So when we make our selections, we need to remember to subtract 8 from it. And again, this is me getting confused at this point and setting it up so that I had, instead of just doing 0 through 7 again, or 6 again, I thought I would end up doing 8 through 15 for some reason, and that just ended up with me having to subtract 8 from I pretty much everywhere, which seems like a rather stupid solution for this entire setup. If available options at I is equal to true, then again, if our selection had I minus 8, so that would be our 0 point. And interval speed, interval timer, draw text. And that causes the text to jump in and out if we are selecting it currently. And drawing our next page option there, drawing our text normally right there. And we have drawing our ammo box. And last but not least, we have our, at the end, instead of drawing the E-tanks specially, we draw the extra lives in a special way, because we have to draw the extra life sprite, then draw the text from the option text, the space, space, and then we have to draw text for how many lives we actually have. Then draw the health ammo pips. Again, it's basically exactly the same as this, except we don't have the extra loop for the buster, which comes from our health rather than from our ammo. And of course, I messed everything up with this as well. I'm sorry about the mess on that guy. That's probably this is probably the worst code in the entire thing that I set up. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll come across something that I did that was even worse. But I feel this was probably the worst part when I set up everything else. So, anyways, that's all the code that goes into being able to display everything in the pause menu. So, real quick here before we do anything else, though, we need to make sure that we can transition, that we can open up the pause menu. Very simple. Just add a pausing section up here. You can ignore that bit of code because we didn't use object pause. We used menu instead. So if start is pressed and the player object exists, then play the open menu sound and create the pause menu, which will of course deactivate the player object at that point. So it won't continue any of that stuff. And there we go. As you can see, despite all my messy code, it actually works. Nope. Our health restore object disappeared. Let's see what happens when we go to this. Oh, there's our ammo. And there we go. Alright, well, I think that's it for this episode. Let's see, how long did we take on all this stuff? Ouch, 36 minutes. I try not to be that long on my episodes, but sometimes they do take a while to get through. Sorry about that. So next episode, we will work on actually including these weapons and doing some palette swapping so that Mega Man changes his colors based on what weapons you are currently using. But for now, let's thank some Patreon sponsors. I would like to thank Fragile Hearts, Kuru Patreon, Damien, Kenneth Klein, John Dickey, and Vladimir Soldatov for your support of the NES GameMaker. I really enjoy having people supporting me. It makes this work even more rewarding than it already is. So thank you very much. Also, remember, if you have a question or comment, leave one in the comments section of the video, or come join us on Discord, and I'll try to help you out in any way that I can. Or, of course, you could always sign up as a $1.20 Patreon, and you'll get 2 hours of personal help for your projects from me every month. Well, I guess that's about it then. So until next time, good luck with your programming.